Hi guys, I am here with a process video for my December wild hair kit, and I did something special this month in that I made my own sketch, and this is the one that's up on the blog. Um, I wanted something circular without having circles, and I thought triangles would be good because they sort of mimic Christmas trees, and I have this placed the points pointing in. It's a design that I'm sure I've seen a layout or two with, but I was just kind of going by vague memories of that, and I came up with a sketch. So this story that I'm doing is from December 2011, and it is my daughters woke up early, and instead of watching cartoons, they secretly made us presents and wrapped them. And when I got up, I was barely capturing them wheeling back all the present wrap stuff going to the we had a closet where all the gift wrap lived. Now I showed you here this triangle. So when I was doing the triangles for the background, I did a rough sketch and then measured out and figured out that if I cut a rectangle that was 1.5 by 2 3/4, and then I marked the midpoint of one of the short sides and cut from the ends to the midpoint, I could get this triangle, which is what you see there. And here I've been going through and picking some papers. I am using the Pink Fresh Studio 6x6 pad. That's another thing that I really wanted to use for this layout because the colors matched the pictures fairly well, and both my kids are wearing polka dot pajamas. And one of the papers that what I'm cutting right now is they're sort of like polka dots, or I think more like a scattered sequins. Now, really soon here I will be cutting away because this is a lot of repetitive work here cutting these rectangles. So again, the rectangles are 1.5 by 2 3/4. Now for this paper that has the little presents, I wanted to make sure I didn't cut off all the presents and you couldn't really tell what's on there, so I sort of selectively used that as a template. And I'm so sorry that a lot of this is off camera. And fair warning, later on there's parts that are a little bit off camera and I speed things up a lot. This is sort of Frankenstein together video here because there's a lot of repetitive things. I'm going to be doing a lot of cutting and such like that. But sometimes layouts just take a lot of work. And this is one that did, but it's a labor of love, but oh my God, it's one of my absolute favorite layouts that I've ever made. So let's see, finishing up this little spot and we will go to the next spot. Here we go. So I'm at here where I'm marking off the midpoints there on some of these papers. I just wanted you to see that, and then slice from the ends from one side to the midpoint. I'm really loving this Tonic Studios trimmer, the guillotine trimmer. This is an 8.5 inch and it's just perfect for cutting right at the table. Okay, I'm about to, I think, move over to, the end of cutting these triangles. And this part was sped up a little bit more here. Here I put a little bit of adhesive just so they wouldn't move around too much and started placing my triangles. Sort of in a pattern, I didn't want too many, I'm trying to alternate lights and darks. I forgot to mention that when I was cutting the paper with the presents, I did some flipped upside down so that the presents at the top would still be facing basically the right side up. And I was looking at that and it looked too bland, so I decided to cut a couple of the other papers that I hadn't chosen at first. I like the texture of this one that has a lot of little ornaments, and it's like a sketch drawn ornaments, and I'm just going to replace a couple of the other papers, just so it's a bit more random and has more texture. And I think those are the only ones. That's the only one I cut extra of. Now, the paper that looks like sequins, you see the placement there. In my sketch, I had sequins around that area, and I thought I wouldn't want them to clash with the sequin paper. So I'm going to move these papers around eventually. I knew that I wanted to use this buffalo plaid. It is not from Pink Fresh Studios, it's Echo Park. I just knew I wanted to match it up with these papers. So I'm going to go off camera and cut that off. And here we go. Now, here's my sketch, and I'm showing you that it has some mist or splatters. So instead of deconstructing the layout at this point, I just got a new piece of paper and I'm doing my splatters. Now that Heidi Shine, affectionately named Heidi Shine, it's actually Heidi Swap Color Shine, you have to really, really shake it. So you saw me shake it like the hell out of it there. And I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to start transferring things over. So this is where I was thinking, well, there's going to be sequins, which I really wanted to use the Spiegelman Scraps sequins. So let me not place the sequin-like paper on the spots where the sequins show up in the sketch. And I purposely put those on the sketch because I thought I was going to use them. So here instead, I just shifted everything over. You will see by the end that I didn't end up using the sequins because this layout gets really busy. So it was going to be too much. But anyways, here I go, and everything's shifted a little bit from my original, but I really like the placement. And I do like that the presents at the top are upright, not upside down, from having flipped over my little rectangles before I cut the triangles. All right, I think that's about that. Oh yes, since so much of the splatters got covered, here I'm splattering some more, and then I wisen up and get a piece of paper to block off instead of using my hand and getting splattery stuff all over my hand. Splattery stuff. I think this is not a spot where I cut off. I think it just keeps going. Ah, yes, I did cut off because I went off to stitch. And I come back and you will see that I'm going to show you, I stitched at the points are straight on, but the sides that face out, I did some straight, like lined up with the edge, and some I kind of curved inward just for fun. Now I'm going to start taping this down, but I'm going to cut away because here I am again with very repetitive, dull. This makes for dull watching if you had to see all this. So I'll just cut away in a second. And now I've got my little block with my photos. I am going to adhere those down and adhere the block to the layout. So another thing I knew I wanted to use were these Bella Boulevard stars. That is why I used the buffalo plaid, because they match that color. So here I'm going through just checking everything out, and the flare wasn't going to match in color. But those buttons, which are a part of the Pink Fresh Studio, that same line, will work, and these stars will work. So that's where I start. I do 3 clusters of 3 stars each with the 3 shades of aqua blue, one star of each shade in each cluster. Now that seems formulaic, but it really works. It really works for me. Just feeling balanced. And I just take a look at my supplies just to check what else I want to do. Yes, I'll be cutting some of those up later. Well, actually, I'm going to go off to cut off the cut aparts first, and then I'll be cutting out those little trees. Oh, before I do that, though, I decided that even though my sketch showed just one layer behind the photos, I wanted something more. It just seemed a little too bland in the middle. So I grabbed one of the other Pink Fresh Studio papers. This one has cute little X's. And I trimmed down the buffalo plaid. And I'm going to use the 6x6 paper and trim it down, and very briefly I will consider if I can just, there's going to be one edge where it doesn't go over because it's 6 inches across, and my little mat there is wide already. So here I am testing things out, but in the end I decide that I want to just extend the paper. And that's not usually too hard, but I was having a really difficult time lining it up so that there was no shadow of a gap, and also that the design, some of those little X's were cut off, and I didn't want it to be very, very obvious that I put this together and it wasn't one solid piece of paper. So this was very fiddly, and here I was getting frustrated. I just kept going until I think I just finally said good enough. Sometimes it takes a while to get there, but you get there. And now I look at that layout in just looking at it straight up, and I can't even tell there's a seam. So I must have done something right. I must have just worked it out in my head enough that it's like, okay, it's good. I did leave a little bit of a extra on that side, thinking I would cluster things there, but I don't in the end. Oh, I went away and did cut the sheet apart of the cut aparts, and now I am going to cut out the trees. Oh my God, how many times am I saying cut in this video? I'm leaving some of this in, and you'll see later I'll cut more stuff. I'm just speeding things up. But I decided to go with the trees because this layout was about the presents that my kids left under the tree as a surprise for us. And I will be cutting out from the Pink Fresh Studio scraps that had the little presents. I'm going to cut out a whole bunch of presents. I did find a video of when we opened Christmas morning those presents, because I couldn't remember what they'd made us. I'm going to have to search to see if there's a photo because the video is very low quality, but I might do a follow-up layout with the actual presents and talk about those. So, here we are. This is going to involve a lot of fussy cutting. And I used to think I didn't want to do that. Like, why would you want to have to cut out a whole bunch of things? But sometimes those papers have a lot of cute little patterns on them. And like here, I used some of that paper in my little triangles, but it lends itself well to just cutting out those little bits, especially since I didn't have ephemera in my kit. Here I am doing pop dots. Now, the trees, I did one layer of pop dots, and the presents, I doubled up so they were thicker. They stick up a little higher. And looking back, it probably would have been easier to use some foam and then glue it on. But I used pop dots, and it is what it is. Oh, so out of this sweater weather paper that has all these words, I took my title. So I didn't know what I'd call this, but since I loved this story, I loved this moment, this Christmas memory, I took Love This from that paper, and that's going to be my title. Here I am just distressing the edges of the mats. I had cut off that little extra piece from the right and distressed it all. Just giving it more texture, more depth. I love doing that. Pop dots under the title. I think I doubled that up so that there was extra thick and it stands out quite a bit. And then this little tiny clothespin from my stash. I was determined to use it. I thought it would be really cute, but you know what? It needs something else to be clothespin too, and just that one piece of cardstock there with the Love This as the title just wasn't cutting it. I didn't have anything else I was going to clothespin together, so that's eventually going to come off. Here I am placing some of the presents, moving the stars around. They seemed a little off now that I decided to cluster so much stuff under the photo. I moved the photo a little bit up and just playing with it, really. This seems tedious, but I was having a blast, actually. It was really sort of therapeutic, just going through this. And I was watching Netflix while I was doing it. I was actually watching Stranger Things, rewatching Stranger Things because I loved it so much. And I just totally lost track of time and had fun just moving this stuff around. Now, fair warning, I typed up my journaling on my typewriter, my actual Brother typewriter, manual typewriter, and I was having the hardest time. So I ended up cutting that out. And then when I went to put my strips, my journaling strips, I typed it out, I cut the journaling strips, and I was putting them on my layout. Part of that video actually got cut off. And so right here, I am going to be going straight to the photos of this finished layout. There's the journaling. That's all you missed, is just the journaling. After I put all those little ephemera, those little pieces down below, which I really love how they came out. There's a close look. And here is one of the little corners, and the other corner is coming up. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this one. I hope it was still enjoyable, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.